Look, your grandfather planted horseradish once in the early 50s. That root stayed there year after year, surviving winters, regrowing leaves, and spreading underground. By the time the 70s rolled around, that same plant had multiplied into a small patch he barely touched, just because he didn't dig everything up. You walk into stores today, and they sell plants that live a single season. You might ask if things were really that different back then. You're not imagining it. Scientists went back and measured it. The numbers are there. Horseradish roots left in good soil survive for decades. USDA records confirm perennials like this weren't rare in home gardens. 50 years from one planting, your family ate from that same root system. Now, you buy fresh every spring and new every year, and you wonder why. Your grandmother knew 40 plants by sight. She could identify, harvest, and prepare them, keeping them year after year. She knew which root would come back, which lettuce would bolt first, and which herbs kept their flavor into November. That knowledge didn't vanish overnight. She had limits too, things like space, soil, and frost dates, but she had autonomy. There were seeds your family saved for generations that were free and adapted to your specific land. That line is gone now. Corporate seeds control 60% of what's in the market today. We're talking about just 3 companies. Nobody asked if you wanted fewer choices. Your grandfather could choose from 40 varieties of tomatoes, but now you walk into a store and see maybe 3. Taste tests confirmed it. People actually preferred sweeter, uniform fruit by a margin of 4-1. Every test showed this. It wasn't rigged. It was market forces doing the work. Back in the 50s, the U.S. population was about 150 million. Local gardens, local seed stocks, and enough diversity to feed families and communities were the norm. Then cities exploded, and the demand for food stretched far beyond what one town could provide. Breeding began in the 60s, aiming for higher yield, disease resistance, and shipping survival. By the 70s, commercialization hit hard. Seeds were patented and varieties narrowed. Farms scaled up because storage needed a 14-day shelf life. Those small, old varieties couldn't survive that math. Scientists documented this variety reduction. They saw the count go from 40 down to 3. Histories in seed catalogs and USDA surveys measured it. You weren't screwed over maliciously. The system optimized to feed 335 million people. Your autonomy couldn't survive that scale. It wasn't malice, it was math. Understanding that gives you closure without rage. In the 80s, consolidation accelerated. Hundreds of seed companies shrunk to just 10 by 1988. 3 companies held 60% of all seed genetics. People didn't notice at first. Most people walk past this every day and don't see it. You see it now. Consumer preference favored uniformity. Taste tests favored sweeter flavors. Economics determined what scaled. Your grandmother's patch, your grandfather's horseradish, and those small family lettuce varieties just couldn't travel or compete with scale. That knowledge died with them. The rituals, the seed saving, and the intimate understanding of seasons ended. You can mourn that, legitimately. Trade-offs are real. What you lost was autonomy, variety, and an intimate connection with edible plants. What you gained was the ability to feed cities, populations that doubled, refrigeration, and logistics. You can't have both. Your grandparents had freedom and closeness to the soil. You have abundance, shelf stability, and access to more calories than ever, but you have less control. That's not theft, it's balance. Your people knew this work. Farmers, home gardeners, parents, each choice they made was measured. Every reduction in variety came from math, not malice. You see it in seed catalogs, USDA archives, and breeding logs. By the 90s, the last real autonomy vanished. Variety counts were low, genetics were owned, and every seed was tested, uniform, and patented. Walk into any store today, and you see 3 tomato types. Just 3. Remember that patch in your grandparents' backyard? One root in the 50s became a small colony. Nobody bothered to sell that because that system couldn't scale. Economics won. Taste tests showed consumer preference for sweetness, and shipping required durability and frost-resistant uniformity. It wasn't a conspiracy or some corporate trick. It was just the numbers catching up to biology. That connection to your grandparents' knowledge was real. You inherited memory, not practice. You're the generation watching it end. Mourning is legitimate. You can feel it without rage. Scientists measured flavor compounds from the 50s and documented an 80 to 90% reduction over decades. USDA records show the variety counts. The scale of cities, population growth, and shipping logistics demanded uniformity. Local plants and intimate patch knowledge couldn't survive that. It's math. It's inevitability. Your grandfather's horseradish didn't cheat death. It multiplied quietly underground, resilient, like your grandmother's practices. You bought new every year with seeds controlled by the 3 companies that dominate the market. That loss is real. You can see it, hold it, and grieve it. But you should also recognize what survived. Abundance for millions, reliable produce in stores, and varieties bred for disease resistance and shelf life. You can't have both. Your grandparents' patch stayed alive in memory and in soil. You inherited the story, not the practice. That's how it ended. It's closure, acceptance. You understand the pattern now and the trade-offs. The mystery of why you can't grow those 40 varieties anymore is solved. You see it. It's real. Planted once in 1952 and harvested until 2002. 50 years from one planting. You walk into nurseries today, and they sell plants that die every winter. Want to know why? Your grandfather knew this. He planted horseradish once, left it in the ground, and it spread. One root and tiny fragments multiplying every year underground. Nobody had to babysit it. USDA records confirm long-lived plantings in family gardens lasted decades without replanting. That wasn't luck. That was knowledge passed down, tested, and refined over generations. Your grandmother knew 40 edible plants by sight. She could tell you which root, leaf, or fruit fed her family. That knowledge died with her because nobody wrote it down. Seeds your family saved for centuries adapted to your soil, weather, and taste. That line is gone now because corporate ownership absorbed it. Was it really different? Scientists measured it, and the numbers are there. Studies comparing vegetables from the 1950s to the 1990s show bitter chemicals went down, flavor intensity dropped, and variety counts collapsed. 40 tomato types in one neighborhood became 3. Nobody asked if you wanted fewer choices. Look at carrots, peppers, and greens. USDA surveys document the reduction. Those taste tests weren't rigged. People picked sweeter 4-to-1 every single time. Your grandfather's garden fed his family reliably. Today, you walk into stores and see the same 3 varieties on endless shelves. You're not imagining it. Your autonomy shrank. That system optimized for feeding 335 million people. Your grandfather's choice wouldn't survive that math. Not malice, math. Understanding this gives closure without rage. By the mid-1950s, family gardens still dominated. Heirloom seeds thrived locally. Your grandparents selected what worked in their soil. They harvested partially, let roots multiply naturally, and left the land fallow when needed. It was low maintenance, resilient, and an intimate connection with food. USDA records from 1959 confirm widespread home cultivation of perennial vegetables and roots. Then in the 1960s, breeders started hybrid programs. Crosses aimed at uniformity, shelf life, and disease resistance. Researchers measured compound levels. Sweetness increased and bitterness dropped. Flavors shifted. Families noticed. You remember your grandmother saying they don't taste the same. By the 70s, commercialization accelerated. Seed catalogs from Burpee and Fairy Morse listed fewer varieties every year. 40 varieties became 3. 3 companies controlled 60% of seed genetics by 1988. By the 1990s, autonomy was gone. You buy every spring. Roots you could leave in the ground for decades are now patented and no longer yours to save. That knowledge and your connection were severed. Economics, not conspiracy, drove it. Population doubled. Cities needed food that traveled 2 weeks without spoiling. Taste tests showed consumers preferred uniform sweetness. Shipping dictated hardiness. Scale required uniformity. Your grandfather's choices couldn't survive that math. You lost intimacy with your food. Your grandmother's rituals vanished, the seed saving, the plant selection, and the careful harvest. That connection was real. You inherit memory, not practice. Mourning is legitimate. You can feel it. But gains exist too. Nationwide distribution feeds millions with consistent quality, safer storage, and predictable yields. The trade-off is that you lost autonomy and connection, but society gained scale and reliability. You can't have both. Your grandfather's low-maintenance perennial gardens are incompatible with supermarket logistics. You get closure when you see that balance. That's the truth. Economic forces selected what scaled. You weren't done to by a secret plan. Population, shipping, and consumer preference dictated choices, not conspiracy, not malice. 3 companies controlling 60% of genetics isn't theft. It's math and scale. You can mourn it. Understanding why doesn't mean approving. Acceptance comes when you see the system couldn't do both. Your grandparents' plants were autonomy. Modern food is scale. You can't have both. You walk past grocery shelves today and see identical peppers, carrots, and lettuce. Most people don't question it. You see it now. Researchers measured compound levels and documented an 80 to 90% reduction in flavor intensity in commonly sold hybrids. That richness your grandmother remembered is gone. But fruit travels further, and food doesn't spoil on long truck trips. Economics selected for distance, not taste. Local, intimate, seasonal choices were lost, but urban populations survived, thrived, and expanded. Science confirms the pattern. Heritage was lost, but gain was achieved. That's the trade-off. Your connection with edible plants became memory. You inherited experience, not practice. That's real. Mourning is justified. Perennials like horseradish, rhubarb, asparagus, and sunchokes persisted in family gardens for a long time. You see pictures from the 1950s with dense, multi-decade plantings. By the 1980s, commercial catalogs showed only 1 or 2 varieties. USDA archives confirmed decades of variety loss because of uniformity, shipping, and shelf life. It wasn't a conspiracy. By the 1990s, perennial autonomy was mostly gone. Seed patents and hybrids replaced self-perpetuating plants. Your grandfather's choice became impossible at scale. The intimacy of selecting a plant, saving seeds, and watching it propagate underground was erased by math. That connection is memory now. You can mourn it. It's legitimate. But urban supply stabilized and millions could eat. Taste was sacrificed for scale. Your grandparents' low-maintenance gardens couldn't feed that many. You can't have both. 3 companies controlling 60% of genetics doesn't feel like closure, but it is. It's the math of scale. Look at tomato catalogs from the 1950s to the 1990s. There were 40 varieties in 1955, but by 1985, there were 3 dominant types. Study after study confirms the loss of diversity. That autonomy and your choice are gone. USDA archives prove it. Scientists measured compound levels, flavor flattened, sweetness increased, and the bitter edge diminished. Your grandfather's choices would have been crushed under shipping, storage, and uniformity pressures. You can see it now. Rage isn't necessary. Understanding why allows closure. Economics, population growth, and logistics selected winners and losers. Heritage was lost, and scale was gained. That's the truth. You inherited memory, not practice. Mourning is natural. Acceptance comes from understanding that the intimacy couldn't scale. Your grandparents' gardens couldn't feed 335 million people. Math chose winners, not malice. Your loss is real. The gain is also real. You can't have both. The system optimized. Your grandmother grew 40 plants and knew soil and seasonality intimately. That line of edible knowledge ended with her. Seed-saving traditions vanished and local adaptation died. By the 1970s, commercial agriculture favored uniformity. Taste tests, shipping requirements, and disease resistance drove those economic choices. By the 1990s, hybrids dominated, and perennial autonomy was gone. You buy every year. Roots that once survived decades underground are now replaceable, patented, and ephemeral. The connection was severed. That morning is valid, but urban populations were fed. Scale was achieved. Your grandfather's gardens, while intimate and low maintenance, couldn't scale. You can't have both. You inherited memory, not practice. That understanding allows acceptance. You might walk past produce today and feel cheated because bitter chemicals were lowered and flavor was flattened. Choices are minimal, 40 varieties down to 3. USDA and breeders' logs confirm it. But think about the math. The population doubled. Cities required a 14-day shelf life. Taste tests showed consumers preferred sweeter, uniform produce. Economics dictated the winners and losers. No conspiracy, no malice. Heritage was lost, scale was gained, and the trade-off was balanced. You can mourn the intimacy that died because that connection was real. You inherited memory, not practice. Closure comes with understanding that you can't scale intimacy like your grandparents did. Roots that stayed in the ground for 50 years are gone, but millions are fed reliably. That's reality. Mourning is legitimate, but rage is unnecessary. Acceptance is possible. You see the pattern now. You understand why autonomy vanished. The connection was real, but the system was necessary. You get closure. Planted once in 1952 and harvested until 2002. 50 years from one planting, and now you buy new every spring. Your grandparents had it figured out. They didn't buy every year. They stuck a root in the ground and it fed their family for decades. That is documented in USDA records and breeders' logs. You walk into nurseries today and they sell roots that barely last a season. You're thinking maybe it's just nostalgia, but scientists measured it and the numbers exist. The roots your grandparents grew were hardy, perennial, and true to taste. Now, you get plants optimized for first-year growth, blemish-free appearance, and guaranteed sales. It isn't malicious. Economics decided because the population doubled. Cities needed food that could travel. Taste tests proved people preferred uniform, young roots. This guaranteed repeat purchases. Your grandmother knew 40 plants by sight and could identify, harvest, and prepare them. When she died, that knowledge died with her. Seeds saved for generations that were adapted to your soil are gone. Nobody wrote it down. You inherited memory, not practice. That connection was real, and you were watching it end. Your autonomy was already gone. Scientists compared variety counts from the 50s to the 90s and saw 40 varieties drop to 3. Nobody asked if you wanted fewer choices. 3 companies control 60% of seed genetics now, a consolidation that happened between 1970 and 1990 while you weren't looking. Most people walk past this and don't notice, but you see it now. Your grandfather chose from 40 tomato varieties, but you see 3 in stores today. That's not a conspiracy. It's math and scale. Population went from 150 million to 335 million, and local systems couldn't feed that. In the 50s, perennials like horseradish, rhubarb, and asparagus were common in home patches. Roots were woody but flavorful. Leaves, herbs, and greens were all saved for winter storage. Records prove it. USDA surveys show gardeners kept seeds, shared plants, and had autonomy over taste and yield. By the 60s, breeding programs started targeting uniformity. Bitter chemicals in greens were reduced, and yields became more predictable. Science measured an 80–90% reduction in compound levels. Then, in the 70s, commercialization exploded and nurseries marketed first-year vigor. You bought plants that were young, uniform, and perfect. The trade-off was flavor, long-term connection, and heritage lines. Taste tests confirmed consumers preferred these, picking sweeter options 4-to-1. Every test showed this. Your grandmother grew variety, but you get homogenized consistency. That's economics, not betrayal. By 1985, consolidation intensified. Hundreds of seed companies in 1970 became 10 by 1988. 3 companies control 60% of seed genetics now. You can't save seeds anymore because they're patented. Your autonomy is gone. Legacy lines are patented, licensed, and restricted. Market forces selected what scaled: uniform roots, young perennials, fast-growing greens, and a long shelf life for shipping. Cities demanded produce that could travel 14 days, so farmers adapted. Local variety couldn't compete. Population growth dictated the supply. USDA data shows the top 30 varieties dominated supermarket shelves. 40 varieties became 3, and nobody asked which you wanted. That choice removal was real and painful, but it was necessary for feeding millions. Your grandmother planted rhubarb once in 1952 and harvested it until 2002. 50 years from one planting. You walk into nurseries today and buy new every spring because that old system couldn't scale to feed 335 million people. It wasn't malice, it was math. Understanding this gives you closure without rage. Seeds your family saved for 200 years are owned by corporations now. That line, that adaptation to soil, and that flavor profile are gone, though you might see snippets in archived catalogs or a photo. The autonomy died with her. That connection was real. You inherited memory, not practice, and you can mourn that legitimately. There were trade-offs. Your grandparents' system, perennial, flavorful, and autonomous, had limited yield and scalability. You get reproducible supply, global distribution, and consistent flavor for mass consumers. You can't have both. That's reality. But your mourning is valid. You lost intimacy and heritage. Knowing a plant by touch, smell, and season is gone. Economics demanded compromise. Population doubled and cities demanded transportable produce. Taste tests confirmed consumer preference. That's why first-year roots dominate today. It's not a conspiracy, it's optimization. Your grandmother's autonomy would have faltered at this scale. The loss is documented in variety counts, compound levels, seed ownership, nursery catalogs, and USDA surveys. You can see it and feel it. 40 varieties to 3. Seeds saved for generations are now patented. Perennials were replaced by first-year vigor roots because scale dictated the change. Taste tests confirmed preference and economics mandated it. It wasn't malice or conspiracy. You can mourn it legitimately. Understanding why intimacy can't scale brings closure. Population, shipping, taste, and distribution are all math. Your grandmother's wisdom wasn't destroyed, it was just incompatible with feeding 335 million people. Accept that and own that memory. That connection was real. You inherited it. Practice was lost, and taste, tradition, and autonomy were traded for reproducibility and scale. You can't have both. Now you understand. The mystery is resolved, the pain is acknowledged, and closure is achieved.